Okay, let's go ahead and look at solving equations that have parentheses in them. So we looked at this a little bit before. If you have parentheses, remember you need to remove the parentheses using the distributive property first before you start trying to solve. So order of operations says you need to deal with the parentheses first. So if I look at example 1, I have -8 equals negative parentheses x plus 4. So we said before that this negative means I need to distribute a negative sign through the parentheses, or it's the same thing as a -1 times x and a -1 times a positive 4. So I'm distributing a -1. So this is -8 equals -1 times x is -x, -1 times a positive 4 is a -4. So you just have to be really careful with your signs. And now I want to get the x term by itself, so I'm going to deal with this -4, and I'm going to add 4 to both sides of the equal sign. And when I do that, I get -8 plus 4 is a -4 equals a -x. And now you can't have a -x. I want to solve for x, not -x. So the way to get rid of this -1 is I could multiply or divide, and I'll just write it as division, it doesn't matter, by a -1. And that'll get rid of that negative sign. And so when I do that, -x divided by -1 is just a positive x equals -4 divided by -1 is a positive 4. So x equals 4. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this example 2. In this case, we have two sets of parentheses and a number in front of both of them. So I need to distribute both a -1 through the parentheses and a -6 through the parentheses. So go ahead and pause this and do that distribution. Okay, so when you distributed, you should have had a -1 minus 7z plus 42, so be careful with your signs. A -6 times a -7 is a positive 42, and then again be careful, a -6 times a -z is a positive 6z equals 36. And now before I go ahead and solve, I need to combine like terms. So I have a -7z and a positive 6z, and those combine to be a -1. So I don't need to write the 1, I'll just say -z. And then I also have like terms with the -1 and the positive 42. We can combine those, and those combine to be a positive 41. 42 minus 1 is 41, equals 36. Okay, so now we want to get that z term by itself. So I'm going to deal with this term that doesn't have a variable, the positive 41, and I'm going to subtract 41 from both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and write it over here, I get -z equals -5. And then the same thing, you can just change the signs here if you want, or I'll show you again. I'm going to multiply or divide, in this case I'll write it as division, by a -1 to get rid of that negative sign in front of the z. You could also do the shortcut and just change both the signs, which is basically what you're doing. So this becomes z equals a positive 5.